Owen Jones, Guardian columnist and host of the Owen Jones Show, now on YouTube. Welcome and thank you for speaking to me today.
It is a massive honour. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. I mean, given the climate we're in right now, I think there's a plethora of things we could talk about and diverge on, Brexit and coronavirus. But really, I want to talk to you today about column writing, because I know that there's a lot of people that are competing in the Shine Awards who are really interested in what you do specifically as arguably one of the most influential left-wing commentators in this country. Or is that Keir?
That's Rickman. Say hello, Rick. Rickman's gonna. If the camera's suddenly whacked over, that's definitely Rickman. Oh, carry on. I'll bring him over. Here we go. Carry on.
This is your cat Keir, isn't it?
This is Rickman. No, Keir. We've got Keir as well. So this is Rickman. He's named after Alan Rickman, who is the late great actor, of course. But he's definitely in a fighty mood, so he might just throw the camera over. So apologies if that happens.
Well, it's always gonna happen. It happened with me, and I think it happened when you were interviewing Peter Oborne, which is
it happens a lot. I'm in live on Sky News doing some really important points, getting really passionate, and then the cat suddenly appears.
The glory of Zoom. So as sort of an icebreaker, I'm afraid I'll have to give the obligatory, what makes a great column, but I suppose I'll whittle it down because, because we could be talking here all day about what exactly makes a great opinion piece. But if you had to say one overarching quality that for you makes a compelling opinion piece, a compelling op-ed, what would that be?
So what you're either doing in the comment piece that's really good is you're either coming up with your unique perspective, your unique opinion on something everyone's talking about, or you're coming up with an issue that no one else is talking about and you're explaining why it's important and why it matters. So for example, if it was a case of, if we look at, Brexit, there's lots of obvious opinion pieces people could write. Why I don't like Brexit or why I do like Brexit. But that's not a great opinion piece because that's, there's millions of comment pieces along those lines. It's a well-rehearsed argument. Everyone's heard over and over again why Brexit's great, why Brexit isn't great. So if you were going to come up with like your own unique view on Brexit or a unique impact of Brexit or something that hasn't really been talked about, and that makes people think, and, it makes them go, I've not thought about that angle before. Maybe that'll make me think about the way I look at this issue differently. Or if you've written a piece about something that no one's writing about, and then people go, oh, wow, it's not an issue I've ever thought about. This is, people should be talking about this issue. So I think that's what, you want to get people into, that's the general kind of, come up with something original, come up with something unique, either a unique angle on something everyone's talking about or an issue that no one's talking about and that needs to be heard. I mean, for me, the reason I write is because I want to give a platform a voice to people, to causes that are otherwise ignored, that people aren't talking about, to kind of help hand the microphone over to people whose lives are hard, or to raise an injustice that needs to be heard. So during the pandemic, there's lots of opinion pieces being written. Obviously, at the moment, most opinion pieces are about the pandemic, as you'd expect. What I'm passionate about is, what's this mean for people in poverty? What does this mean for people with bad mental health? What does this mean for people who are lonely? It's to try and use a big, terrible crisis and national emergency that is everyone is being hurt by, but some more than others, to shine a spotlight on problems that already existed but have been made worse. So that after the pandemic, people think, well, the pandemic's gone, people have been vaccinated, people are now safe. But what about, this has really shown how, for delivery riders, how insecure their lives are, or private tenants, people who are in the private rented sector, how, they didn't get a mortgage holiday like people with mortgages. They have to pay their rent. They often can't afford it because of the crisis. We need to help them. So for me, it's always, how can you put a spotlight on things that aren't properly being heard? How can you make people emotional about them? How can you connect them on an emotional level? And there's two things, because, in an ideal world, you'd win an argument based on facts. You just go, well, this is what the statistics show. But we're not robots. We don't work like that. We're emotional creatures. So for a long time, we heard a lot about benefit fraud. It was this idea that, for me, I was angry about the fact millions of people actually needed help from the state but weren't getting it. They were poor, their lives were difficult, they were insecure. But all we ever heard about was the tiny minority who were playing the system. And what you'd always hear is, this is how, on the front page of The Sun, here's a scrounger living in a mansion made out of widescreen television sets with 50 kids. And then people like me would say benefit fraud's only 0.7%, but people don't connect with a statistic like that. So for me, it was a case of how can I find powerful stories that will also emotionally connect with people. So for me, that's the other thing about a column. You want to blend in facts and statistics because they are important. But if you can connect to someone on an emotional level, that will help convince them more of your argument and what you're trying to convince them of.
And I suppose touching on some of the themes you've said there, I mean, your former Guardian colleague, Suzanne Moore, she once said that, a stellar column is sometimes like an antenna that's just picked up the background noise. But would you say that, in our hyper-partisan climate of coronavirus, European Union, national populism, that almost opinions are becoming too saturated and the focus of print nowadays is on delivering these editorials, and in many ways the news, the actual facts of the story are almost playing second fiddle?
Well, my main problem with the media is that opinion and news have become blurred. So when I write opinions, they go in the opinion section. That's where they appear. And in theory, the news section is supposed to be people not saying what they think about the world, just laying out what the facts actually are. And unfortunately, in the media, those lines aren't clear enough. So you'll often get people who are as opinionated as I am. I don't pretend to be anything other than an opinion writer. That's my job title. But there are people writing front pages of newspapers, which are obviously just opinions, but they're saying that's the news. So for me, the important thing is always stick to the facts. Like I would never write an opinion piece where I've put in any facts that are wrong. And the Guardian, what the Guardian do as well is they fact check everything. And if you've put anything in your opinion piece that is proven to be wrong, they actually just put a correction at the bottom of the column. Quite embarrassing if that happens very often, going, this piece was amended because this fact was wrong. So they won't just change your piece to say you got a fact wrong, to correct something you've got wrong. They will publicly declare to the world, this was wrong and we've had to correct it. So it's very important you always stick to the facts in an opinion piece. It's that argument, that the old expression, you're entitled to your opinions, but you're not entitled to your facts. You always have to be accurate. You've always got to tell the truth. Even if it's not convenient to what you think about the world, you can't put in things which are not true or correct. So a good opinion piece should always, what I do in an opinion piece is I will ring people so if I'm writing about the Saudi-led war on Yemen, in which the biggest humanitarian crisis on earth, I've been to a refugee camp, I've spoken to refugees from Yemen, but I will ring the Campaign Against the Arms Trade, who are campaigning against British bombs being sent to Saudi Arabia to be dropped on children, including school buses. I will get the facts from them. How many arms have been sent to Saudi Arabia? What are being dropped? Or if I write about marginalized minorities, take trans people. So trans people are getting demonized in the way gay people were demonized in the 1980s as sexual predators preying on children, as brainwashing children. Biology is destiny. What I will do is I will talk to organizations that work directly with trans people. I will talk to feminist voices who are very much at the forefront of fighting for trans rights. And I will stick to the facts. What's actually happening? What's the lived experience of trans people? So I will find statistics about the fact that trans people are far more likely to commit suicide, that the vast majority have faced abuse in the streets, that most are scared to use a public toilet, that about 10% every year are physically assaulted by their customers or work colleagues. These are facts that need to be put in. And what I'm doing as well as those facts, I will then interview trans people about their experiences. What are they going through? What's it like to be scared of leaving your own house whilst everyday newspapers vilify you? So I think it's so important with pieces is that you weave together the facts but also people's lived experiences. That's what, and you're being clear, this is my argument. But the other thing you should also do in an opinion piece is be clear about what your argument is. You're not writing on the one hand this, on the one hand that. You've got to be clear, this is my opinion. If you write an opinion piece where you're trying to work out what you think as you write it, it'll be a mess. So you've got to be clear where you stand, but you should engage with other arguments. So you should say, some will say this and some will say this, and here's why they're wrong. So a strong opinion piece won't pretend these arguments don't exist and just say, here's what I think and here are the facts I've found to prove my argument. They will actually go through and you will engage with your detractors. The people who will say, this is why you're wrong. If you anticipate what they're going to say in advance in your piece, that will make it a strong argument because you're bulletproofing your argument.
And following on from that, speaking to people on the streets, finding a unique voice or angle, what is your writing process then? Is it a case of them, if you have something that you really want to find, you will actually go out physically and find that angle? And then with that also, your kind of general process about the environment which you work in, how do you feel most comfortable when you have to write a piece of copy that you've been commissioned?
Well, writing generally with hanging out with my cats in my flat. But I often have to write my articles on trains and wherever I am in the world, to be honest. I've had to write them on planes. I've had to write them in refugee camps. I've had to write them, in very varied situations. And sometimes you're under a deadline, you have to write very quickly. And it depends on the opinion piece. Some opinion pieces, I will ring think tanks or academics or economists. People, if I'm writing, because as a columnist, you want to write about a very broad range of areas. But the danger with that is, how can anyone be an expert on so many different fields? And of course you can't. So what you have to do in that case is, if you want to write an informed piece on different areas, is you should speak to the expert. So I will ring, if I'm writing about the Middle East, I will ring experts on the Middle East and I will get their views, their facts. That doesn't mean I just defer to what they think, because there are experts in every field who completely disagree with each other. It's not like there's an objective truth about anything. I don't believe that. I think there's lots of different angles and opinions people have. Some people will see the same event and come up with a completely different conclusion, but you want to be armed with the facts. So I will ring think tanks, I will ring campaigners. If it's about an event that happened, I will try and speak to witnesses, and then I will look up the facts. So I will look up facts it can vary from facts which have been printed in newspaper articles to facts that in academic or think tank reports or reports written by campaigning organizations. So if I want to write about, again, the Saudi war in Yemen, what I will do is I will probably ring what they're called non-government organizations like Campaign Against the Arms Trade, have a chat with them, or at the very least, they've got these big fact sheets which are available online, which say this is how many weapons have been sold to Saudi Arabia, this is how much it's worth, this is how many bombs have been used, we estimate. So for me, it's a case of, it depends on the opinion piece. Sometimes I'm just writing an opinion piece about my experience. It might be about me growing up or about the lived experience of someone around me. It doesn't have to be an opinion piece about just loads of facts. Every opinion piece varies. I might write a piece about how young people can't get affordable homes, in which case I might do a shout out on social media for young people struggling to get a home and get their experiences in. And then at the same time, I might ring up Shelter, the housing organization, who deal with the crisis in housing. And then I can combine their stories with the facts, because, you can't just rely on anecdotes. Anecdotes are very important, but everyone has a different experience and their anecdote might not be representative. So you want to get in the facts overall. Here's someone who is paying this amount of money each month, and this is why they're struggling. And this is the general picture. So I'll do a shout out for individuals who are struggling, but then I'll talk to the experts in a housing charity who every day have to deal with the overall picture. So it's about mixing and matching, but sometimes you just write an opinion piece from the heart about your own experience. Sometimes it might be something about, I wrote a piece about on Strictly Come Dancing, the first same-sex partnership on Strictly Come Dancing. I don't have to ring a load of academics to talk about that. I can talk as a gay person about what a landmark that is and why it's important. and why these landmarks matter, particularly for young people who are struggling with their sexuality, for example. Or, if sometimes people write an opinion piece about a song which might have a feminist message and why that's important. And then again, it's not like you have to ring some academics or experts to talk about that. So, opinion pieces vary. Some people will use pop culture as a hook for their piece. Some people they'll be talking about a war going on. The thing is just try and convince people. What you're trying to do is, this is my particular opinion on it. These are the facts I'm using to back up my opinion. And here's hopefully some human stories which flesh up what I'm saying and why it's important. My own human stories or people I know. And then it's up to you whether that changes your mind or whether I've made you at least think about the world differently or see things in a slightly different way than I already did, or disagree with me, but respect my opinion. And that's what you want to do with an opinion piece if you can.
And you have that access to, being able to speak with the different think tanks, and you yourself have been involved as well within Labour Party. You're a writer in newspapers and also a book writer. These two, Chavs and the Establishment and This Land, which I promise is in my reading list, I'm for sure of that. But as a result of that, you often, because you have these views that are out there, and sometimes people are so divisive in terms of those on the other side of the spectrum, particularly on the political right, you often can get on the wrong stick of things. So how for you, how's best to kind of combat, constructive criticism, but also trolls and hate and general misdemeanor that happen on social media?
So if you've got a strong opinion on things, then you'll have people with strong disagreements with you by definition. That's inevitable. And what's happened in this country, I'm sure everyone's noticed in the last few years, is people's opinions have got often harder and there's been more division. And that started, I think, with Scotland back in 2014. They had a referendum on whether they should be independent or not. And you had people like, yes, they really should. And people like, no, we really shouldn't. And in the course of that referendum, those views got more entrenched and people got more passionate and angry. And then we had Brexit in this country, of course, which divided families, communities, the country, political parties. Labour had its own internal civil war that divided people as well. And so a lot of people got angry with each other because they felt the stakes were higher. They felt that the other side wasn't just disagreeing with them. They were actually, their views were dangerous in some ways. That's how people ended up feeling about each other. People on Brexit, for example, people who were opposed to Brexit thought Brexit is a national catastrophe, which will leave us economically weaker and the country smaller on the global stage. And it's fueled by people not liking immigrants. On the other side, people felt this was a democratic result. You lost, we won, and the will of the people has to be exercised. And lots of people who didn't like the referendum result are now doing everything they can to overturn it. So you can see how they're going to get really angry with each other because they both think the other side is actually quite dangerous. That's how it ended up feeling. So that gap becomes hard to bridge and people stop respecting each other. They start to just think the other side is bad. So, I mean, what I try to do, I do this video channel, which I've just launched, and I interview people on the right. I interviewed Peter Hitchens, who's a right-wing commentator, Piers Morgan, who I'm sure many of you know, is a daytime presenter with very strong opinions. And I like doing that. I always, every year I'm on the left, I support the Labour Party. Every year I go to Conservative Party conference, I go around interviewing people. I've gone to a Brexit Party rally, even though I'm a Remainer, though I suppose one of those Remainers who is kind of like, felt not too passionate about it. But I went to a Brexit Party rally. Lots of people yelled at me, but I'm interested in that. I don't want to be in my own bubble. It's good to get out of, because a lot of people I'm close to have opinions that are similar to mine. Not all by any stretch, and they make that clear on a daily basis. But it is, I think, if you want your opinions to be a good thing, particularly in a climate where people are so divided, is to at least go out of your comfort zone and talk to people who strongly disagree with you. And if you do that, it's not about thinking to yourself, I'm going to give up what I think, but at least it enables you to get into their heads, to understand what are they thinking and why. And that enables you to write stronger pieces because you can anticipate the objections people have to what you say and what you think. And then if you write in advance, because otherwise you'll write a piece and then they can just tear it apart. They go, well, they've not even engaged with this. They haven't even thought about the weaknesses in their argument. But if you know what people think are the weak parts of your argument, because you've spoken to them in advance, you've debated with people, you've discussed with people you disagree with, then you'll have a good, you'll be able to write a column that is much, much stronger.
And finally, to anyone watching this, because many of the people watching this, are in secondary school, many have aspirations of going into journalism or becoming a commentator like yourself. What advice would you give them?
Firstly, do it because not because you want to be an opinion writer for the hell of it, but you've got really strong opinions that you want to share with the world. That's really important. And I'd encourage people to do it for, do it to punch up if you can rather than down. There are lots of opinions in the world which are about why immigrants are responsible for the problems, or refugees, people who flee terrible suffering and violence, or trans people, or, benefit claimants. Try and punch, hold the powerful to account. They're the ones in charge. The politicians, the business people who won't pay proper wages, the tax dodgers. These are the people who run the world. So it's good to be able to have people who want to take on powerful people, rather than people who aren't powerful and can't fight back. I mean, we're taught that in school, aren't we? Pick on someone your own size. And unfortunately, the media is full of people who pick on people who can't. You can write an opinion piece read by millions of people, slagging off someone whose life is really hard, and they can't speak back. They don't have a platform. You're not going to get a refugee the next day writing an opinion piece about why you're wrong. But so I think that's important. But the other thing is, just to get there, set up, go to something like WordPress, go to a blogging website, set up your own account. If you've got it costs maybe 10 or 15 quid. If you've got any money at any point lying around, buy your own domain name, name it after yourself. Seems a bit arrogant, but do that. And then use that blogging website, which you can put under the domain name, to just start doing your own blogs. Don't do long blogs. Start by doing like 600 words, just your own views about the world around you. Maybe it's things going on in your life. Maybe it's something going on with your friends. Maybe it's about your worries about the world. Just start writing. Just write your opinions. Experiment. You'll get things wrong. You'll write things you'll later regret. I mean, don't take that too far. But, and send those blogs around to your friends. See what they think. Just start doing it. Because the way a lot of people, I started doing this, I started blogging, and then I got noticed by editors who then asked me to start writing for newspapers. So just start experimenting. Set up a blog. Write your ideas. Don't be nervous. Don't think to yourself, I don't know enough about the world, because often it's people from the richest backgrounds who often feel the most cocky and confident, but that doesn't mean they're better. It just means they're more confident about things. So I just think, have some confidence, set up a blog, experiment with it, play about with your opinions, send them to your friends, see what they think. And then you'll just get better and better. You'll find your own voice. But that's what I'd start by doing. Start blogging, start playing around with that. And that's what I started doing, and that's one of the reasons I'm now speaking to you now.
Owen Jones for the Shine School Media Awards. Thank you so much for speaking to us today.
It's a real honor, and best of luck, everyone.